All right, we're recording. Good evening. My name is Mr. Ken. I'm a park naturalist at Gulf Branch Nature Center, and tonight we're going to talk about some arthropods. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see the presentation, and we'll go through it. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. So we're gonna. So we're going to talk about arthropods and what they are, and we're going to talk about some that you can find around here. Um, This right here is a phantom crane fly. It's one of my favorites. It looks like a big scary insect, and it is not. You can see the black and white bands. I think it's one of the more beautiful flies that you'll see, and it is a fly, even though it's really big and different looking. But it is one of our flies, and what we always like to get started with is to make sure we're all on the same page, so all agree about the groups that we're talking about. And in this case, we are talking about arthropods. And what is an arthropod? Well, arthropods are animals. So when these are all animals you can see right here, but we're going to take out the vertebrates, which is the turtle and the deer, because arthropods are invertebrates. They're invertebrates. That means they do not have backbones. Um, and then arthropods also tend to have an exoskeleton and jointed legs or appendages. So we're going to take out the snail and the slug. And what we're left with here, this is a good grouping of arthropods here. So you can see arthropods include crayfish and woodlouses or pillbugs or sow-bugs or roly-polies or whatever you like to call them. Uh, they include spiders, daddy longlegs, ticks, butterflies, and other insects like walking sticks, grasshoppers, and beetles. This is an Eastern Hercules beetle, if I remember correctly. It's really neat. Neat beetle is one of my favorite things I've been able to see since moving here to Northern Virginia. Um, so when you look at the arthropods, they break up into a bunch of different groups. We're going to talk about a few of the common ones you'll see here and show you some pictures so you can be sure of what you're seeing out there. The myriapods, this word is myriapoda, or the myriapods are the centipedes, the millipedes, critters with lots and lots of legs and segments. And then this group here includes the crustaceans. That's your shrimp, your lobster, your crabs, and a few other groups that I'm going to save for later to talk about. Here, this is the hexapods, and the hexapods, hexa means six, and pods means feet or legs. So anything with six legs, and that includes all of our insects because they have six legs. Um, Arthropods also includes the trilobites, which are an extinct group of critters that were pretty neat looking. We've got lots and lots of fossils of. The Xiphosaura, I hope I'm saying that right, which is the horseshoe crabs. That we still have horseshoe crabs around. You can go see them on the shore of the Chesapeake. And then arachnids, so our spiders, our ticks, our scorpions, our daddy longlegs, those kinds of critters. Now, as I mentioned earlier, arthropods have an exoskeleton and jointed appendages. We have an endoskeleton. Endo means inside and exo means outside. So, excuse me. Arthropods have an exoskeleton means their skeleton's on the outside. So when you're looking at this cicada, when you're looking at this spider, everything you're seeing is their skeleton. Okay. It's not a covering. Like we have skin and muscle and lots of layers over our skeleton. Theirs is on the outside, so we're not seeing anything covering their skeleton. We're seeing their actual skeleton. Their exoskeleton gives them form. That means their shape. It gives them their color. This beautiful green on this spider here, the dark black, and the orangish on the legs here of the cicada. And so yeah, it gives them their shape, it gives them their color, and it also helps them with their function. The things that they're able to do with their exoskeleton and the way it's shaped, aids them in flying and digging and crawling and making noise, in listening and seeing, all those things, all those ways that they need their body parts to do different things. The shapes that help them, the parts of their body are all part of their exoskeleton. Um, we're close to the end of these. I actually heard a chorus somewhere today, the periodical cicadas, but at the nature center there are none. There were none singing today at all. Saw a few, but they were at the end of their days. This is a magnolia green jumping sparrow. Beautiful. The bigger they get, the odder they get. When they're younger and smaller, they're really bright green. They're really neat. Obviously they like magnolias, but I found them on other places as well, and they're a real A real neat spider really kind of look a little different, almost uh, prehistoric at times because of the shapes around their head. But this is a spider you can find around Gulf Branch Nature Center. And again, I'll say the Nature Center, but I'm really talking about Gulf Branch because I'm at the Nature Center up in the north part of Arlington area at Gulf Branch. So if I do say the Nature Center, I'm talking about the grounds there. But there's a lot of good stuff you can find all around Arlington at the other two nature centers as well. So, really fancy word, if you want to say tagmata, is a grouping of segments. So when we talk about insects, one of the first things we learn when we're talking about insects is that they all have 6 legs. You can see the 6 legs here: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that they have 3 body parts. They have a head, they have a thorax, and they have an abdomen. And they are body parts. They're not segments because each of these, the thorax and the abdomen, can be broken up into different segments. And the thorax in insects is also important because it tends to be where where all the legs and the wings attach. So all um, the body parts it uses to move are attached to that segment in the middle. So here's a couple different views. Here is a dragonfly on the left. And if you look at that long, I think a lot of people probably think of this as a tail, and it is their abdomen. They use it for balance. They can't sting or move it a whole lot, although the females do bend it when they're depositing eggs. But if you look closely, I'm hoping that you can see my cursor. You can see a line and a line and a line and a line and a line. Those are all segments in between those lines. There's a segment, and there's a segment, and another segment, another segment. And so the colors and the shapes and even the number of segments can be really important in identifying different kinds of dragonflies. So that is one way to, and if then of course what's on the colors on the cells and lots of other colors, but those segments can really help identify that as well. And then I got really lucky getting this picture. This was on one of the windows at another nature center I worked at, and this big grasshopper happened to land there. So on the bottom you can see again, this is the thorax, and you know it's the thorax because the legs are attached. That's all thorax. This is the head segment right here, and then starting right here is its long abdomen. Um, so but there's segments, there's different parts of each of these segments. You can see it's broken up into different little bits as well. So those body parts are actually like an area with lots of different segments. And an exoskeleton has to be shed in order to grow. To get bigger as a spider, as an insect, as any of these arthropods, you have to get rid of your old exoskeleton. Because once your exoskeleton hardens, it doesn't grow anymore. We are really lucky to have an endoskeleton that is inside, and our endoskeleton grows with us. Now we'll get growing pains as we're getting older, and eventually, obviously, we stop growing. We don't keep growing forever and ever, but our skeleton grows with us so we don't have to shed it. These critters, all to get bigger, have to get rid of their entire exoskeleton. So this is a spider exoskeleton. Again, hopefully you can see my mouse, but I'm going around those 4 little circles there, and those each of those circles is where one of its legs came out. So when the spider comes out, or when any of these other critters come out, they are actually smaller than their old exoskeleton, but they've got to let their new exoskeleton expand and get bigger. And so butterflies will pump their wings, and dragonflies will pump their wings, and other critters that have wings will pump their wings. For a spider, they don't have any wings to pump, but they do have to find a safe space to kind of hide and wait. And when they come out, they look much different. They don't have their color because until their exoskeleton hardens, they don't have their regular color. So these are those periodical cicadas. I showed you the picture earlier. It was all black with the orangish legs and wings. When they come out, they look a very light color, and that's because um, their exoskeleton hasn't hardened yet because they want their exoskeleton to expand so that they can be bigger. And they have to wait to do that. And as that exoskeleton hardens, it gets darker, and then that's when they get their regular color. You can see their eyes are already that red color, but the rest of their body hasn't darkened to the right color yet. And I actually took a video here. This is about a minute long, and this will show you what takes a couple of hours, but it'll show it to you, like I said, in a little less than a minute. Uh, a, a cicada emerging from its exoskeleton, or so molting its old exoskeleton to get a new one. Wonder if I can. What I'm gonna do is show, but I don't want to show it to you there. I want to get it kind of right here and pause that. If you look here, you see what looks like fibers sticking out of the old exoskeleton. Those are actually the breathing tubes. So when the cicada comes out of its exoskeleton, and this is true for some of our larger insects, it actually pulls out its own breathing tubes. It's kind of like almost like it like rips out its own lungs, which sounds really horrible. And it probably is really tough because they got to hold their breath at this time until their new breathing tubes are ready to help them breathe. So they do have to kind of stop breathing during this process at some point, which is really tough because again, it's a tough thing to do to shed your exoskeleton like that. And again, they come out really light. You can see there's a couple of dark patches here, and I think these are meant to look like eyes to scare potential predators. But their skin is really light. You can see the couple of small eyes there on the top, and they got their bigger compound eyes. But until it's going to take another hour or so before their exoskeleton starts to harden and darken, so they look like their regular cells. There we go. There we go. And again, our arthropods that you see, you can find some really small ones. You can find some really big ones. This is Daphnia pulex, and again, it's a type of Daphnia. These are tiny, um, little crustaceans that live in water. If you were looking at the water, they would look like a speck of dust until they moved. They'd move a little bit. They are plankton, so they can't fight the water current, but they do move in the water column up and down. So in the during the daytime when it's bright out, they actually sink down into the water column, meaning they sink lower into a pond so that the fish that hunt and eat them can't see them. Because a lot of the fish that will eat these guys use their eyes. And so when it's light out, they sink down deeper into the pond or the water where it's darker and hard to see them. And then at night, when it gets darker, they'll move further up into the water column or further higher towards the surface in the pond so that they can avoid being predated upon as much as possible, avoid being eaten. And so they do this every day. So I know, hopefully, you might be familiar that like some birds fly away during the winter and then they come back. Uh, this guy moves up and down in the water of a pond every day. These critters do. And so it's almost like they migrate every day. They move up and down, but that's what they do to avoid getting eaten and also to be able to find the food. I think they like to eat algae, and the algae's got to stay up um, in the part of the water where the sunlight comes in, and so they've got to get up there to eat it. But it's not safe to do it during the day because of the fish. So they go up into the top of the water, near the surface of the water at night, and then they sink back down into the darker water during the day to avoid getting eaten. On the other end of the arthropod spectrum is some of our bigger arthropods. Uh, This is one of the largest. It's the largest on land. This is called the coconut crab or the robber crab or the palm thief. And you can see there's its Latin name right here underneath all those, which is a safe way to refer to it around the world. Most people don't really know that name unless you're a scientist or a researcher. But that's how it's referred to by everybody that in the scientific community. But it has several common names. That is a coconut that this crab is sitting on, and the crabs can actually get to be about 3 feet long and weigh almost 40 pounds. So they are large, and they are the largest arthropod you'll find. We don't have them around here. You'll find them on islands in Southeast Asia. I want to think like over there, and I can't remember what islands, but you don't find them around here. My favorite picture of one of these to give you an idea of how big these critters are is this picture, and I took this picture, I copied it from Snopes, but Snopes is a website that checks whether things are really, really true or not. And the picture looks really good, and I hope it's true just because I think that's such an interesting picture. But there's actually no verification, and they couldn't really figure out who took it or how true it really is. Um, but I can just imagine somebody coming out and going to use the trash can and being a little startled. And they don't attack people, they don't eat critters. They actually eat coconuts. And they don't even climb. They can climb trees pretty well, but they don't go up the tree to get the coconut. They wait till the coconut has fallen, which is very smart thinking. And obviously, this one is either trying to hide here or whatever. But again, I just can't imagine the surprise of that person comes out to put the trash out and finds this in their garbage can. Or maybe they're used to it. Who knows? I know I would be surprised if I found that around here, which we wouldn't. But the largest arthropod is the Japanese spider crab, which lives underwater, and they can get really big. They're a very large crab, definitely longer than 3 feet. I don't know that they weigh more than the robber crab. I think the American lobster, which is something that people also eat, I think the lobster actually weighs more than the spider crab, even though it's bigger. And the American lobster can weigh upwards of 40 pounds as well. I think maybe even more than 40 pounds. So again, we go from these tiny critters that just look like specks of dirt in the water. To get a picture like this, you've really got to you got to have a microscope. You got to be able to magnify it. You go from these little tiny critters to some of these really large critters, either underwater or on land. Um, and there's a lot of amazing diversity, a lot of really different critters you'll find in the group arthropods. So we're going to meet some of these groups, and then I'm going to show you some that you can find. I'm going to talk as we go through. I'll try to point out some we can find around, but I'm going to end with spiders, and I got several spiders you can look for around here, and I think they're kind of an easy group that's not insects, because I think most people are familiar with insects, so I thought I'd kind of focus on spiders a little bit and talk about where some of you can find some of these critters. So again, here is the distribution. I think, if I remember correctly, I think we're starting with the crustaceans. Woohoo! Yeah, I got it right. So these are all crustaceans. We got crayfish here in the bottom right, which looks like small lobsters. Obviously, we mentioned lobsters. This is a kind of shrimp. These are from the Chesapeake. Were caught in one of our camps when we visited there, and you can see that they're caught in a net, but they're very clear. But these are shrimp. Here's a hermit crab. This is the only critter here that you can't see within an hour or so drive, because this was actually found in. This is a picture from Texas. Off to the left is the Atlantic blue crab, which you can pretty much find all along the Chesapeake. And that was pretty easy. This is found in the same area as these shrimp. These are both found down near Flag Ponds in Calvert County, Maryland. And then the middle and the bottom here, these are woodlouses. I think these are shiny woodlouse, if I remember correctly. There's several different species, and again, people call them pill bugs, roly-polies, sow bugs, lots of different names for them. And there are several different species. If you look, you see there's a lot of different markings on them, and so you can actually identify them into different groups. And I'm about to move on to the next slide, and you'll see that these are different from these. Different shape of their back, their shell. They don't have the big protruding, the same kind of protruding antenna, or the same dark head at the front like these guys did here. You don't see that here. But two very different species. They all have a type of lungs. We have lungs. You take a deep breath and you let out. You breathe in air and you take some of that oxygen out, and you replace. You exhale and you get rid of some carbon dioxide, so you don't have too much in their body. They have a kind of lungs as well, like us, but their lungs are not quite the same. Their lungs actually have to stay wet. So these critters like to spend most of their time under rocks, under logs, places that stay moist throughout the summer, and so that's why when you roll a log, when you roll a rock, when you look under, a pile of debris, like, excuse me, some old sticks or tarps or something, you tend to find a lot of these, and they're under there because all those things I've mentioned tend to hold moisture to the ground longer. And I think you could probably even find some under leaf litter. But if I'm really trying to find one of these, I'm gonna look under a log. I'm gonna look under a rock, and you tend to have a lot of luck. And so they again seek out places that have moisture, because that's what helps them breathe. So that's really, really important. And there are some critters that specialize in eating theirs. There's one type of spider called a woodlouse hunter, which obviously hunts woodlouses. And so that's pretty neat. But again, these are an easy way. If you want to see crustaceans in your neighborhood, this is a really quick and easy way to go. Again, I think for me, when I was thinking crustaceans, the first thing I think of is crabs and lobsters, and those tend to be saltwater. So you got to get somewhere where there's an ocean or a marine environment. But you can find crustaceans really pretty closely right around here. And then, of course, one of the other ones that's you can find are crayfish. I honestly just chose this one because the species is called a devil crayfish, and I just think it's a funky name. And I think it might be because of like the red on the ends of the pinchers there and around the head. But crayfish look like small lobsters. They tend to prefer freshwater environments. So you can find them in streams. Sometimes you find them in lakes, depends on the species. You can find them often even in wet fields where there are species that burrow in and have these underground burrows that are partially submerged, and so they're able to survive there because it's a wet area. And they'll even, they'll dig these um, holes up to the surface, and they'll push out the mud that they're digging out to hollow out their burrow, and they'll make like a little turret or a tower. And so that's one way easily way to find their activity, even if you don't find them. I grew up in northwestern Pennsylvania, and in that area there along the Great Lakes into Ohio and I think some of the neighboring states, there was a small type of rattlesnake, and one of its preferred habitats was living in the burrows of these crayfish that burrow into the ground. So that was always kind of neat too. I never saw one, one of those rattlesnakes. I would have liked to have seen one, especially in the burrow. I think that's just a neat little thing that they do. So crayfish can be really important food. A lot of these arthropods, there are some that are predators that eat other arthropods, but a lot of arthropods, one of their most important functions for so many other critters is as a food source. So let's talk about the myriapods. Um, and pod means foot. I wish I don't remember what myria means, and maybe I'm hoping it means many because that makes sense. The myriapods are centipedes and are millipedes. If you want to see one really quick and easy, this critter here is called a house centipede. And they're actually really fascinating. And I know it's hard to find people that find them as interesting as I do, because they scurry on the ground. All those legs are moving. I forget if they have like 15 or 17 pairs of legs. And then, like most centipedes, their front legs are actually modified. That means they're different or changed into fangs that they can use to um, pierce their prey's skin and inject venom to subdue them. But the cool thing about these house centipedes, again, they're a non-native species, but I don't think they're invasive, but they tend to be really helpful. I know a lot of people don't like seeing them in their house, but if you got these guys in your house, they're eating spiders, they're eating roaches, they're eating other insects that you don't want in your house. So as uncomfortable as it can be sometimes to know these guys are in there, they're actually really helping you out, and they don't tend to bother you at all. If they see you, poop, they're gonna go the other way. So they can be a really helpful critter to have in your house. Millipedes, speaking of millipedes, millipedes have many segments, just like centipedes. On each millipede segment, you've got four legs or two pair. So you have two pairs of legs. This is one of the flat-backed centipedes or millipedes. You can find this one. I think this one I found out near Shenandoah, out in the Blue Ridge Plateau. These on the right are greenhouse millipedes. I forget if it was a wet day or we rolled a rock or what, but just happened to find this massive accumulation. I don't think I've ever seen this many of these greenhouse millipedes elsewhere like this. Occasionally, we'll pull something up and you'll find several of them. We have planters on our steps at the nature center, and if you gently lift one, you can find maybe a half dozen, but not numbers like this. That I think it was just happened to be there at the right day at the right time. Um, I like millipedes because they're a fun critter to pick up. You can show they don't have um, fangs. They don't have piercing mouth parts like centipedes do. They are herbivores and they eat plants. Um, One of the defenses they might have, I think a lot of these flat-backed millipedes have it, is they can exude poisons, things that can make them distasteful and make you sick. And there is a type of millipede that can actually exude cyanide, which is really bad poison. So if you're picking up if you're looking at a millipede and you pick it up and you happen to smell almonds, that's cyanide, and you want to make sure that you go ahead and wash your hands after handling them. But these are, like I said, they are herbivores. They're not very um, or they're herbivores, so they're not going to bite you, so they're really safe. The worst they're going to do is either, like I said, excrete some poison or maybe poop on you. And I've had millipedes poop on me many times. Centipedes, you find these little red and these brown centipedes. Centipedes for each segment only have one pair of legs or two legs on each segment, and they have that modified front pair of legs is modified into fangs. We can get a closer look at that head. You can see right here on either side of the centipede's head are these piercing fangs that they use to mobilize their prey. I don't pick up centipedes because they have fangs. I'm happy to always try to catch one, like in a bug jar or something, take a look at them because I think it's really neat. But they are predators, and in some of the tropical areas, you'll find centipedes that are big that have some serious fangs, and you also find out that some of them will catch and eat vertebrates, meaning small mammals, reptiles or amphibians, like small frogs or lizards or snakes. And they can be some pretty significant predators on some small vertebrates, which I always think is cool. Again, vertebrates are animals with backbones. Um, this one I just found. I think this one I found when I was cleaning out my rain gutters. Just happened to be hanging up there. Probably meant that my rain gutters need to be cleaned a lot sooner than they were. All right. So these are the myriapods. You got like I said, the centipedes and the millipedes, and we are going to move on to insects. This is a group that I think a lot of people are familiar with because they have 6 legs. I think it's the group of arthropods that are probably talked about the most. The second one being probably spiders. Um, they're a really diverse group. Uh, the numbers of different kinds of insects and arthropods are incredible. I think like 80% of the living species of animals are arthropods. And insects make up huge numbers. Beetles in particular, like this guy here, the beetle numbers themselves are just absolutely incredible. I think there's more beetles than any other kind of uh, non-insect animal in the world. Maybe it's all other animals, and the beetles are just incredibly diverse. And so, who do we have here? We got a dragonfly here. This is a widow skimmer. It's a beautiful powdery blue in the darker inner part of the wings here. I forget what kind of katydid this is, because it's named after, I think, whoever described it. But this is a really neat one. This is one of the robber flies. These flies hunt and catch other flying insects, often in midair. They catch them and eat them, and they're really neat to see. And this is a smaller one. There's some pretty big ones. There's one that's called the red-footed cannibal fly, which is one of my favorites. It's a pretty neat guy. These are not to scale, by the way, because this is a really big beetle. This is an eyed click beetle. The click beetles are a family. There is a protrusion and a notch located between two of their segments, and what they're able to do is push that protrusion into the notch and then pop it, and it causes them to pop up in the air. And that's their defense. And sometimes it makes a noise, but it's usually the action that can be really startling to a predator. I don't know if it was this one, but I remember taking a picture of one of these, and I was taking a picture and got a little closer and take a picture, got a little closer, and I got so close that I startled the beetle, and it popped and hit my camera lens and bounced off who knows where, because I wasn't able to get another picture. And these eye spots, you can see there's eye spots again there as well. Those are supposed to warn you off and trick you into thinking that there's a predator looking back at you. But these are pretty big. One of our bigger beetles you find, and I've actually seen a couple this year already, which is surprising because usually if I'm lucky if I see one, because they're not something that's really rare, but you just don't see a lot of them. This is one of my favorite wasps. Wasps belong to the Hymenoptera. Hymenoptera are your bees, your wasps, your ants, your termites. Pretty big group. Really, a lot of diversity. There's a Hymenoptera representative. What's really neat is this one's called a cicada killer, and they specialize in hunting cicadas. And now you would think this is a great year with all the cicadas, but they don't actually hunt the periodical cicadas, because the cicadas that come out every year, the dog days, don't come out till mid to late July into August, and that's when these wasps develop into adults. And so um, these wasps actually missed a really good meal because of the timing of when the periodicals come out versus the dog days, which I think is also part of their strategy. But this is really cool. This is a big wasp. It's pretty impressive when you see it. Usually has no interest in you or even defend itself to just fly away. But they're always on the hunt for cicadas and large insects to sting and paralyze and bury with an egg for food. Uh, Hopefully everybody recognizes this. This is a mosquito. And I believe this is one of the non-native species that I think it's the Asian tiger, which are actually day flyers, which are even more of a pest. And this one was trying to get a meal through my knee, there through the pants. Um, and mosquitoes are actually in the group of flies, so they're in the same group as the excuse me, as the robber flies. And again, there's many other flies, and that crane fly that I showed you at the beginning. And then there's the true bugs, which includes plant hoppers like this one here, which is really pretty. I think this is a rhododendron leaf hopper. Really, really pretty green and red. There's another one, I think it's called the candy stripe. And this little family has some really pretty leaf hoppers. There are some that grow that look like they have, that look like they're small thorns. There's a lot of really neat and interesting critters in that group. This is hopefully recognized as a butterfly. This is an eastern tiger swallowtail, which is actually our state insect. And butterflies and moths are pretty well known, and butterflies get a lot of attention. So I just picked a couple groups out of the insects to kind of highlight, show you a little bit of their diversity. These are dragonflies and damselflies, the odonata. This is a blue dasher here. This is easily one of the most common dragonflies. So if you want to see a dragonfly, you can go just about anywhere that there's water, any kind of pond or um like a pond is I'm sorry is a really good area. I don't think they do streams, but if you go anywhere where there's a pond where there's water that's not moving, you're going to see blue dashers. We have a ton of these in our pond, and we get a bunch of these as well. This is a great blue skimmer. See those light blue eyes, really pretty, and this really almost like chalky white to chalky blue coloring down the thorax and abdomen. These two are some that you'll see that are really common at our pond. This damselfly is also really common, but you're not gonna. It's not as easy a spot. But again, if you look hard enough, you see it, and it looks like it has an exclamation mark on the back, the long color, and then the dot. Um, Damselflies keep their wings above their abdomen, folded flat, and then dragonflies, when they land, have their wings out to the side. So you can see here, these three are dragonflies on the left. This is a damselfly, and this is a damselfly. This is also a damselfly in the middle. It's one of the family that actually kind of hold their wings out a little bit, but they don't have them completely flat. They don't have them completely up. They're called spread wings. So we have great spread wings in Gulf Branch Nature Center area as well. This is a wandering glider. If I remember that correctly. Maybe that's not. I'm going to back off because I don't remember what this was. I will tell you, all these are, you've seen that Gulf Branch. I think that's where I took this picture. I got wandering glider in my head, but that might not be correct. But again, really pretty. You can see the markings on the wings, which really stand out in the two tones on the abdomen. So a nice, pretty dragonfly there. And then this one on the end, this damselfly is one of my favorites. It's just got this metallic green, sometimes it's bluish color, and these dark wings that are opaque. This is called an ebony jewel wing. They like forested ponds and streams. So if you got water and there's a lot of forest over it or trees around it, they tend to like that area. So Gulf Branch they really like. I don't see them too much around the pond, but we do see them along the stream in Gulf Branch. And they are really neat critters, and they're easy to spot because those wings are so dark that when they're flying, you still see the black flapping around. They're really neat. Dragonflies are really strong flyers. Damselflies not as much, but they both catch insects on the wing. I don't know if you can see in any of these pictures. You might be able to make out a little bit here. They got really their legs look hairy and they're covered in spines, and that's one thing that helps them catch their flying prey. The other group I thought I would spotlight is the Lepidoptera, but not butterflies. Everybody knows butterflies. Everybody likes butterflies. Whoops, that's not what I want to do. I want to talk. I want to show you a little bit about moths, and they have an incredible diversity. They can be really, really colorful and pretty. You see, I think most of the colors of the rainbow. Maybe I don't see any blue there, and blue or purple is a little not well represented. But you got a lot of reds and orange and yellows. You got some green. You got black and white, some gray, some brown. Lots of different colors all throughout here. And again, moths are beautiful. There's lots and lots of moths, and you could, I think, go see a new moth every day for 30 years before you run out of moths. And you have to work a little while to get all of those around that they're in North America, but there are tons and tons of really neat moths. And again, as I mentioned with like the dragonflies and damselflies, dragonflies land and they hold their wings out to the side, and damselflies hold their wing back and above. Typically, when you talk about the difference between moths and butterflies, you always say moths hold their wings out to the side when they land and they keep them flat. and butterflies hold their wings up, but moths really just a lot of them do whatever they want. So not all of them rest that perfectly. That's a ermine moth, and there's one of the plume moths, which have a really interesting shape. This is a looper. You've got a datana, and this is Schlegler's fruitworm moth, which looks like bird poop, and it's supposed to, because if it looks like poop, critters that don't eat bird poop, which is probably most of them, are going to avoid it. So that's a little bit of camouflage to try to fool a critter into not eating them. There's a moth there. I can't remember what that one's called. This is, I think, a fern moth. It's been a while since I've looked at these pictures. This moth is trying to look like a stick sticking out. And it will look like a nub of a branch or stick. This is I think, a veneer moth, and these are the ones that when you walk through grass, you'll see these tiny little moths fly out in front of you and land on another grass and get to the other side and try to hide. And that's this family of moths that are hiding in the grass all the time. Uh, Another moth, which I think looks vaguely like bird poop. And here's a moth that's really trying to break up its silhouette and look really, really different from a moth. Again, tons of diversity, lots of different critters. And like, if some of these might not even have common names, they might only have a Latin name, which is really interesting as well. So I wanted to hang out. We're going to spend the last couple of minutes here with spiders. We talked about whoop, 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 whoop. There we go. Sorry. We talked about 6 legs and 3 main body parts when we're looking at insects. Spiders have an opisthothoma, which you used to call abdomen, and they have the prosoma or a cephalothorax. And so if you look at the green arrow, that was the head and thorax combined on spiders, whereas they're separate on insects. And then obviously the orange one is the abdomen, so that's similar. But unlike insects, in addition to 2 main body parts, they have 8 legs. They've got these 8 legs, so they got 2 more legs than insects. Most insects have 4 wings. Some only have 2. Some don't have any, but most insects are winged. Spiders do not have wings. When insects molt, they can get bigger and bigger. They can molt several times, but once they have their wings, that's it. They're done molting, with one exception, which is the mayflies, but they only do it one more time. Spiders can grow and get bigger. I don't know if they have if they can only, they only get so big, and if that's just because eventually they get old or whatever, but they don't necessarily have that limitation on molting because they don't have wings, so they can continue to molt and get bigger and bigger. And most spiders have 8 eyes. So 8 legs, 8 eyes. That's what you gotta remember. And those eyes can be important for them, obviously, for seeing. When you got the big eyes, like up in the corner here, you got these big eyes on this critter here. You can see a lot of these do. The bigger their eyes, the more likely it is that they are a hunter. So lots of spiders build webs, but not all spiders build webs. And spiders with these bigger eyes in the front are usually visual hunters. That's how they find their food. For us, the arrangement of spider eyes can help us identify them. The 4 in the middle are called the median eyes, and the 2 on either side are the lateral eyes, which means side. And this arrangement actually will help you understand why it's hard to sneak up on spiders, because they don't have the big compound eyes of like a dragonfly or a fly where they can see in almost every direction, but they can still see, excuse me, with those 8 eyes in a lot of directions. Okay, and again, you can see at the bottom, this view is looking into the face of the spider. So different arrangements will tell you that these spiders are in different groupings. Okay, I like this one right here. The second one in on the second row just looks like that spider was surprised, even though those are all eyes and not meant to be a face. But you can look at these and see that each of these belongs to a different group. So that one I was talking about here, which is the Hogna species, those are wolf spiders. Again, big eyes because they are hunters. Down here in the lower left, Salticidae. Okay, big eyes, those are the jumpers. Those are the jumping spiders that have those really big eyes. Um, and again, these eyes in the corner here that aren't a whole circle, but like a half circle, or a crescent, those are facing off to the side. That's why they're drawn like that. So they have eyes in different directions that are helping them find that. Dolomedes spider here. These are the big fishing spiders. We'll talk more about those in a little bit. Some big eyes, again, for hunting. They are not building a web and waiting for food to come to them. They're using those big eyes to help them find their food right away. Yeah. And again, just another note here. These are not legs. They're called pedipalps, and they help them to feel. and they can help them to smell. So these are really, really important as well, but they are not another pair of legs. Um, and I always like pointing out to this because I hear this a lot from people. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. This is a daddy long legs. It is not a spider because while it does have 8 legs, and you can go ahead and count them if you want, it only has one body segment. Spiders have two, so this is not a spider. And I've had people come up and tell me before that this is the most venomous spider in the world. Well, no, it has venom, it can't bite us, and that's why it's gotten that reputation that, oh, it can't bite us, but if it could, we'd be so sick. Well, no, it's not that venomous. It is venomous enough to catch small insects and arthropods and critters like that, which is what it needs that venom for, but its venom is not super, super scary that could make us really sick if they were able to bite. And again, like I said, they do have small mouth parts. Let me come back here for a second. Oh, I as a kid did not like spiders at all, and I found them to be quite terrifying. And as an adult, I got around it by playing with some of these guys here, the jumping spiders, not the big ones. This is a big jumping spider here. You can the eyes look serious, but it's got big, big fangs. But a small spider with small fangs is not able to bite through our skin because our skin is not our skin is, or rather, our skin is pretty tough. Like this one here in the bottom right. This is another little jumper. Probably not a big deal. And again, a lot of spider venom is not for people. It's for other invertebrates, other arthropods, and so it tends to not react to us. There are spiders that do have venom that can make us very sick. Okay, we don't have a lot of those around. We have black widows in Northern Virginia, but I don't even think you can find them really in Arlington very much. Um, uh, so that's important, if you're in an area with lots of spiders and you want to know, it's important to know if they're medically serious. But just because a spider's venomous doesn't mean it can make you sick. So let's meet a couple of neighbor spiders. This is a one really, I think spiders are sometimes some of the easier arthropods to find, and they're quickly recognizable. So I want to share a couple of spiders you can find in your neighborhood, and then I'll see if anybody has any questions. Um, the house spiders that you see on your house, sometimes in the corners in the basement, this is a common house spider. I don't even think this is native to North America, but they are really common and they're an easy one to find. One that you'll often find again in corners and in dark areas is this long-bodied cellar spider. These are both taken inside Gulf Ranch Nature Center. If you look at this long-bodied cellar spider here, you can see it's also carrying an egg sac in its jaws. Um, some spiders lay their eggs and they're out. Like the house spider, it lays eggs and and they hang out in the web for a while and eventually they leave. I don't know if it provides any other care other than that little bit of safety. Long body cellar spiders, you can see, carry their eggs with them in their jaws until they hatch. And I think they hang out on mom's abdomen for a couple days before they disperse. So that's kind of nice. Speaking of nice parents, these are nursery web spiders. And you can see this is a really diverse looking group. This is all the same species. You see, we got orange, we got the dark brown and the light brown, we got the different kind of brown, dark brown and light brown, almost grayish. And then this one is even a different brown as well. They're just very different looking. We found one of these the other day, and I didn't recognize it at the time as a nursery web spider until later when I tried to run it through, get an identification off it. It's really surprising how different they can be. But they all, they're all the same species. And what they do is when they have young, they carry their young in an egg sac in their jaws until they're ready to hatch, and then they build a web. And the young are able to disperse from that web eventually, but they do protect them for a little while. So these are good spider parents. And fishing spiders are in that same group. They'll uh, carry young in their jaws until they're ready to hatch, and then they'll make a nursery web as well. This one here on the left, this is a six-spotted fishing spider, and you can see it's got its feet right on the water. You can see there's a little depression there. They use the surface tension of the water to scoot across it, just like water striders do. And it's sitting here. It's anchored on the plants. It's got its feet on the water. It's waiting to feel ripples to see if there's something good food that it can eat. On the right, the brown one here, this is a dark fishing spider. This is one of the largest spiders, probably the largest spider you'll see in Arlington. we've seen them in the nature center. We definitely have them in the spring house next to the pond. I've seen them on the fence at the pond. Definitely seen them in the cabin, tons of them in the cabin. I've found them under logs and stuff. They're really common in our area. And again, they can get pretty big. It'll startle some people how big they can get, but they're a really neat spider. And then this one here, I know we've seen in Northern Virginia. I haven't seen around here. This is I think it's the white-lipped fishing spider. You can see there's a little bit of white on the front of the face there. And this one actually lives up in the trees. So they're all called fishing spiders in that family. This is the only one that actually does some fishing because it's on the water. Um, the dark fishing spider you'll find in woods, and this one here, not only we find it in woods, but you typically find it up in the trees, so you don't see it a lot down on the ground. Still one of the prettiest spiders I've ever seen. I thought that was really neat. But you have the fishing one here, the six spotted, and the dark one are ones you're really likely to run into around here. This is one that oftentimes you'll see the web, but you don't see the spider because they can be pretty small. This is called a bowl and doily spider because you can see there's a little bit of a web here and then a really thick part here, and it looks like a bowl or a plate sitting on a doily, and that's where that name comes from. And if you look closely, you might see the tiny spider inside that web there hanging out upside down. This is how you would see it in there, usually underneath the bowl part of the web there, and it'd be hanging out upside down. Or for it, it's probably right side up, but for us, we would think of it as upside down. This is a really common spider area. Orchard Orbweaver, I think they also got this really beautiful abdomen. It's kind of hunched up over their prosoma there. But this is, it's really, really pretty, and they tend to be really common, and you find them in and around lots of bushes and trees and things like that. And then orb weavers are also really common. This is three different examples of it. This is a marbled orb weaver. I forget what these two are called. This might be a barn spider. I want to think this is arabesque, but I don't know for sure if I got that right. But they'll have kind of hairy looking legs, even some hair in the abdomen. They tend to be really good at making webs. These are definitely web spinners. I showed you the fishing spiders, the nursery spider. Those aren't web spinners. These are very good web spinners. The orb weavers can make some really beautiful webs. And so you often see them on the outside of buildings or on the sides of buildings where they build that, or open areas in forests. Definitely seen a lot of marbled orb weavers on the outside of buildings building webs. And then, I guess, there's always jumping spiders. They're one of my favorites. They're easy to spot. These are a couple different ones you might find around here. This is I think it's the tan jumping spider, which is pretty common on and around buildings. I see this a lot on our owl cage. Um, and this one here, I think it's the golden jumping spider. In the light, it can have really pretty colors. We found one today at camp, and it had almost like a metallic green shininess off the back of its abdomen and its head. So really beautiful. And again, lots of different species in this family. They can look pretty different, but you get can have lots of fun with them when they're small because they're ones you can pick up and get a closer look at. And they'll turn around and look right at you too because, again, they've got those really big eyes for looking around. So I think I'm at the end here. Yep. Speaking of the end, this was one critter I found at another park, Scotch Run. And this is a megaris. It's a giant black ichneumon wasp, and they use these long ovipositors they have. The female use that to puncture into a tree to get larvae that are deep into that tree and paralyze them, and then lay an egg on them for a new baby to come out. So really neat. This is one of the first times I found it. They're pretty cool looking wasps. So again, there's a lot of really interesting and neat arthropod diversity out there. If you just keep an eye out for it. So thanks for joining me this evening. Getting close to 8 o'clock there. I want to see if if anybody has any questions. Was I that amazing and good? Oh, there's a question. Go ahead, Anissa.
Okay, ask it. I want to know why they have such legs. Those black ones.
I'm gonna turn my volume up. I can't hear you. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Why do those black ones have such long legs?
Why do who have long legs?
The last one that you showed, the wasp.
Oh, so those things hanging off its abdomen aren't long legs. They're called ovipositors. and think of it as like a pointy straw that they can stick into something and they send an egg down it, and that's how they lay their eggs. Right? I think
Thank
that
you.
you're welcome. Thanks for that. It's a good question. Gabriella?
Is what? Do they take a bath?
Does who take a bath?
The spider.
The spider? A lot of them don't. You know, water can actually be really dangerous for them. Some of the critters that we keep, if they're insects, like we have to keep crickets to feed our other critters. And we don't put water in because if the crickets jump in the water, they could drown because they're not good at swimming. So we actually put gel and other things in there for them to drink from. And so water can actually be dangerous for a lot of these critters. Remember the spider that had its legs on the water? It waits for critters that can't swim to accidentally fall in the pond, and it scoots out and grabs them and eats them. So yeah, water's not always good for a lot of these critters. Good question. Go ahead, Bernard. Bernard, do you have your hand up?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was muted.
Yeah.
You hear me now?
Yes.
That Ichneumon wasp you were showing, it has 3 ovipositors. How does that work? Does each one an egg do it on each one, or they put them all together and egg dies between them, or what?
That's a fantastic question that I don't have the answer for. What I will say is we saw it ovipositing into a stump and into the ground, probably into a root. And there's a membrane in there that expands around because it circles around and goes down, and it almost looks like a drill, like a drilling apparatus. It's really neat. But yeah, I don't know. I have to look that up, and I don't have a really good answer for that or how they do that. But they are, again, that's an impressive wasp. That was longer than my hand. That was a really big
Oh,
wasp.
wow.
My favorite thing to see this year so far.
Yeah, I've seen some big Ichneumons myself. Yeah, I've seen them with maybe not that long an ovipositor, pretty long ones. I really don't like them, but I raise caterpillars and those things lay their
Oh
eggs.
yeah, and they might not be your favorite. Braconids are probably pretty scary too.
The what?
Braconid wasps are
Oh
probably
yeah.
welcome
Oh
too.
yeah.
Yeah.
They're not as dramatic as an Ichneumon, but they're no good.
Yeah.
And the cactus flies.
Yep. Yep. Oh, I understand. All right. Gabriella, do you have another question? No. Okay. Well, unless anybody has another question, I'm going to thank y'all for joining me tonight, and I'm going to head out. I hope y'all have a wonderful night and a good week.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was good.
Thank you. It was good.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed it.
Mama says Mono Colby's.
Yep, yours.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Ugh.